Let's get into it right now with Corey Bernardi, my colleague here at Sky News, and the wonderful Miranda Devine, who I am so pleased we're able to talk to. She's written so eloquently about, well, the fork in the road that Australia faces right now. You can read her stuff in the New York Post, Daily Telegraph, all over the shop. Miranda, I've belted one message for 6 weeks because it matters. It is the mad left. It is a choice.
Look, Paul, you've been really so eloquent about the choices that are facing Australians. I mean, to me, having just come back from America with the 15 months of Joe Biden, it is amazing how fast an incompetent left-wing government can ruin a country, can ruin your life. It's not just a matter of give them a go for 3 years. We're sick of the old mob. It's fundamentally changing the country at a crucial time when we're facing all these economic headwinds around the world. And Australia is poised really uniquely, I think, in the world to exploit our own advantages to produce the food and the energy that the rest of the world is crying out for. I mean, it's such a great opportunity. And, what we would get with Albanese and Penny Wong and Christina Keneally and the rest of them is a minister for the Republic and an ambassador for the First Nations people. Labor will just waste their time on these kind of cultural games and just no one will be running the economy and no one will be watching national security, and we will spiral down into a perilous situation like we're seeing in America.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for being so kind. But also, let's be very clear here too. America is halfway on its way to recession right now. We have the lowest unemployment rate since 1974. Corey, that's why I talk about it every night, because it matters, because I truly believe that the consequences of picking off personality or going with the crowd has a material consequence to the country we love for the worse.
Paul, you're right. It does have a huge long-term consequence. But can I pick up on the point that Miranda made? There's two, actually, that she made. Firstly, no one has done more to point out the follies and failings of Labor than you, right? You have been a champion in this, and you should be employed by the Liberal Party team because they were hopeless in their campaign.
I'm first up against the wall on Sunday morning if it doesn't turn out the right way. But anyway, keep going.
If you're not right. But can I just make this point about the cultural things? That's where I think the coalition has actually fallen short. Right? People accept that they're better economic managers than Labor, typically. They have to make that case, but they should have been pointing out that Albo would have signed us up for every international United Nations treaty organisation, the ambassador for Indigenous Affairs or the cultural liaison officers and all of this sort of stuff, the transgender stuff. That's where they should have been pushing harder, because people are filled with horror because you can't really restore a cultural balance sheet once it's lost. And that's the big problem, I think, for a lot of the traditional coalition base. And now they're searching elsewhere because they're not getting the feedback that they want, the red meat that they need.
But also, I tell you what, here's a big slab of it, right? I'll do the kill in front of right here on the butcher's table, right? Which is people who are worried about whatever this WHO thing when it comes to pandemic management. Prime Minister yesterday couldn't have been clearer. Hell no, no way, not going to happen, all right? So if you've seen it on the internet, read it on Facebook, it ain't true when it comes to this government. Albo turns around and says, we need a new national strategy on COVID. That means the loony Labor premiers are the ones who write it, and he gets it out there and just performs it. And Miranda, again, why I talk about him being Aussie Joe Biden, not because he's in mental decline, not because he's going to fall up steps, but because he is the reasonable face of an unelectable agenda that the left have.
Yes, he is the Aussie Joe Biden, but I think there are more similarities than that, because his gaffes have been catastrophic. If the national polls weren't so positive towards Labor, and I don't think that they're really indicative of how the election will roll, because obviously the government is focusing, and Scott Morrison is focusing on key seats. This is work that's going on under the radar. So, but I think if those national polls weren't so positive for Labor, that people would be actually looking at the reality of Anthony Albanese's catastrophic campaign. It could not have gone worse. I don't think one thing has gone right for him. He's just had, on on the strong ground that the government has and Scott Morrison has as the former treasurer, he wanted and designed his campaign to focus on economics. And Anthony Albanese just played into his hand almost from week one. I mean, he delivered a gaffe a week. And these aren't little gaffes. This is not knowing the unemployment rate, not just sort of getting a point out of place. He didn't know at all. He didn't have the faintest clue what it was, didn't know the cash rate, didn't know the details of his own NDIS policy, and on and on and on. I mean, today, the borders, you put it very well. I mean, you nailed the fact that this wasn't a misstatement. This wasn't he was speaking about something else. He thought that the borders were shut. And in fact, they've been open since November. I know that because I've had friends and family come to visit me in New York. So they have been open for months. And what kind of a bubble do you have to live in as Anthony Albanese not to be aware that Qantas has had full planes going overseas for months? This guy wants to be Prime Minister. I just cannot see it.
Well, what does it say? That he lives under the flight path of Sydney Airport and he hasn't noticed there's a lot more of them of recent months. Oh, that's just a lot of freight going around at 6 o'clock in the morning. Fair income.